All right, everybody. Thanks so much for stopping by another live episode of Real Estate Titans, sponsored by Lionbolt Media. I'm your host, Greg Fowler, traveling throughout the marketplace, interviewing the top real estate professionals in our field, essentially gathering insight, inspiration, really drives and motivates these top producers above and beyond everybody else in what I'd like to consider a real estate titan. Now, our very special guest and feature titan today, I cannot even sit in my chair. I'm so excited. Dan Rochon, all the way from beautiful Virginia. Dan, it's an honor to have you on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure. It's an honor to be here.
This is great. And I can't wait to just dive into the series of questions. Really, everybody out there to get to know you as a man, as a professional, and really just kind of weave so much knowledge and greatness from this mind, everybody. So stay tuned. You're in for a huge treat here, whether you're watching or listening. So Dan, I guess without further ado, let's just start with the first question, kind of telling everybody a little bit about yourself.
All right. So before I tell about myself, Greg, I'm going to do a little recording of that introduction, and I'm going to put it by my bedside because you have such a soothing voice.
Get out of
You
here.
have like that bedtime voice. I love that, man.
Dan, I appreciate you. I love you, man. I can't, I've never heard that one before, but I appreciate it.
All right. About me, my name is Dan Rochon, and I have been in real estate sales since 2007.
Love it.
I have done a lot of different things in real estate sales. I owned a rather large brokerage for 10 of those years since 2007. I've had a lot of success. I've had a lot of learning opportunities. Some others may call those failures. And, it's just like what we were talking about, in the sort of the pregame here. I always endeavor to do my very best and to help other real estate agents do the same.
Gosh,
That's a beef brow.
I love that though, but it's so true. And you're just a wealth of knowledge, and we're going to pick that apart and really kind of dissect everything. So Dan, from the beginning of your real estate career, what was your thought process? Why real estate? What got you involved? And again, to where you are to today?
All right. So I remember, at the time, this was like the end of 2006.
Okay.
Not the end of 2006, it was the summer of 2006 that I remember I had really had this vision in my head. I was working at a high-end steakhouse.
Okay.
And I didn't see the way for the future, so I'm in my early 30s at the time. Okay. And I really had this strong desire to be an entrepreneur. I knew I was an entrepreneur when I was in my young 20s, and I found these not too long ago. I had like business plans that I wrote when I was in the young 20s to do like bed and breakfasts and that type of stuff. I did market research, and they were like in this binder. I went through those about a year ago. I was like, man, that's pretty good, right? I didn't know how to get there, right? So I knew that I was intended to be an entrepreneur, a business owner, to be able to help people to solve their problems, to be able to help people to reach their goals. And as a waiter, I didn't see the way, right? I wanted to have significance.
Okay.
A little bit before that, I was a very active alcoholic, and so that was around 2005. I gave up alcohol, and that's when I started the journey of trying to figure out, okay, what's next?
Wow.
Took me about a year and a half. I went to business fairs. I met franchise owners, and I realized I'm like, okay, it's gonna be like $250,000 to $500,000 to be able to invest into a business, right? And I didn't have that, obviously, as a waiter. I made a good living, right? But, not that good of a living.
Right.
And, apparently nobody was willing to loan me a waiter, $250,000. I can't imagine why they couldn't do that. But, besides.
What's wrong with this world? Come on.
And so anyway, so I realized, hey, a 60-hour course, $2,000 or so, unlimited opportunity and income, the ability to build a business. And that's what got me into real estate sales.
Unreal.
Right. And so then once I got in real estate sales, first 6 months, really tough.
Okay.
November 2007, I got my license. My first closing was April 2008. I remember going to my broker, Karen, and with my wallet and my credit card pulled out. I'm like, Karen, I'm about to pay my mortgage with this. And she's like, Dan, just keep doing what you're doing. All right. And I had this sinking, I had this feeling in my stomach, I was scared, man.
Wow.
And I didn't know how I was going to pay my mortgage. Literally, I was going to pay it on my credit card. I was like, did I make a mistake? And she just encouraged me. She said, just keep doing what you're doing. She was right. And that was April 2008. And then a year later, I had a lot of success in that year. And I was so much success, I was able to actually buy the brokerage that I worked for.
Wow.
And so that was my journey then as a broker, a brokerage owner, and then also as an agent.
Okay. And unbelievable, story. I mean, truly just getting involved into it and your kind of evolution, as it were, through your life and your career. And Dan, you've helped not only, countless amount of buyers and sellers and other real estate professionals throughout the world and in communities that you serve, but in turn through heavy into education and coaching and strategy. So would you mind talking about kind of your progression through your career as a realtor, but then obviously, continuing as a top coach and really just,
Sure.
strategizing with the best and brightest?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Greg. So if you take it backwards, that first year I had the success, I bought the brokerage,
Mm-hmm.
and then at the time I had 20% of the brokerage of an ownership.
Okay.
Yet the other owners had asked for me to be the operating partner.
Wow.
And so I had like less ownership than they did and all the responsibility. And that goes back to just, it's like greed and fear. If I was to backtrack, I know you're going to ask me about learning opportunities before, but I got plenty of them, so don't worry about that. I'll give you, right. So like if I, at the time, I think I was fearful that I wouldn't have the other opportunity to be able to buy a brokerage or be, in that position. I learned through the years that was something that got in my way, right? Because if I was to backtrack, I probably would have slowed that down and got the sales team organized before I bought the brokerage, because essentially I was chasing two rabbits.
Wow. Okay.
But nonetheless, my third year in business, I was able to close 109 transactions. Now, this was in the time of short sales. I flew out to Dallas, Texas, met an asset manager out there. He jokingly said to me, "There's no way I can help you in Virginia, yet if you were licensed in Arizona, Nevada, Arizona, Nevada, Detroit, Florida, or California, I could, feed you business all day." And I looked at him, I said, "Are you serious?" He said, "Yeah." Next month, I flew out to Arizona, spent 30 days getting my license there, flew back to Dallas, and hey, I got my license.
Oh, wow.
And at that point, he was just like there was no way he couldn't, I guess he could have, right? But that would have been really bad.
Right.
So I was able to get an REO account in Arizona, set up a team out there, and then was eventually able to do that in my local market for REO accounts as well. And so that was 2009. 2013, the market had shifted back into like a normal market. And we had gotten going so fast, so quickly, I didn't have a chance to really, get that foundation built underneath me.
Okay.
It was about a year and a half that we actually went backwards to be able to set that, reset that foundation. And then 2018, end of 2018, at that point, I realized, I had to make a Sophie's choice of it's either the brokers or my sales team. And the reality of it was I was not really making money with the brokerage. I was doing okay. I was doing well with the sales team. Sold and not only that, but I knew that I wasn't able to serve the agents within the brokerage in the capacity that they deserved.
Okay.
And so I partnered with a gentleman named Mike Coffey, who I've known for years, and I felt that he could be a better leader for them than myself.
Wow.
At that time, and sold the brokerage to him, and still have a small amount of various different things.
Sure.
But at that time, I went out to meet a mentor of mine, and he had asked for me to write down everything that I had learned, which I did, and that's where Real Estate Evolution came from, which is this is the journey right here that tells agents how to scale, how to leverage, and also talks about my journey as well as a lot of personal development in there also.
Well, I mean, you had mentioned that and brought that up, and I think this is a beautiful segue in this portion. For anybody who's listening and not watching, so Dan just held up Real Estate Evolution. It's his book. He's a phenomenal author, and this thing is absolutely just a wealth of knowledge, crammed full of amazing information. So Dan, what was the thought, obviously, when you were writing that and kind of going through that process, and what can everybody expect when they, go to buy this, and where can they get it and that sort of thing?
Sure. Well, the easy one is www.therealestateevolution.com. It's also on Amazon. Oh, and it's on Audible. That took me about 6 months through coronavirus to get that approved.
Wow.
They had some challenges. Understood. Like that's not not a dig at them.
Right.
It just, they had a hard time getting it up on Audible. But the process of writing it was, as I mentioned, my mentor had challenged me to do so. Yeah, he didn't challenge me really to write a book. I thought I was writing a series of ebooks.
Sure.
And so I wrote a class, which at the time was the 7 steps to real estate sales. And I don't remember what I called it, right? But that was essentially what it was. Taught the class probably 4 or 5 times to, various agents, in the region. And then about the 4th or 5th time, I got, was comfortable with the content. I had it filmed. It was a 3-hour class.
Wow.
Had it transcribed. And then that was the foundation of it. Again, at the time I thought was an ebook. And then I started to write. And as I started to write, I remembered, I didn't know where the finish line was. And about 3-4 months into it, I realized, oh my goodness, like I'm actually writing a book. Wow. Right. Like I didn't even, I didn't have that vision, and that's unusual for me. Right. Sure. Normally I have a clarity of where I was going. So it was around that time that I said, really, brainstormed to get the vision of where I was going. And, as I was writing, it took me 13 months to write. I wrote every single day, and it was an average of 3 hours.
Unreal.
I remember seeing John Maxwell on stage, and he, is an author, and he was coaching real estate agents, right, in regards to like the time on task and just do it every single day. And he's like, as an author, he says, even if it's 5 minutes a day, if it's Christmas, I'm going to write. If it's Thanksgiving, if it's my birthday, if it's my anniversary, it doesn't mean that you have to do it for 14 hours. It just means even 5 minutes. And that is like, chopping down that tree. That's the intention that you have to have on it. Wow. Which is what I incorporated. And then, so 13 months later, the book was launched, and that's where we are today. Oh
gosh, Dan, I love that. And again, it just it happened to come to fruition. And again, it's interesting as your perspective is you can usually see far and you can kind of look to that, but this kind of happened. But some of the best innovations happen through that necessity of just kind of going through the process. And gosh, I mean, I just can't wait for everybody to kind of dive in and really enjoy that book and just really some of the takeaways. So again, everybody, I'm going to have links in the comments down below. So the realestateevolution.com, and that'll be down in links below. So you can go on Amazon, anywhere that you need to go to pick that up and get some more information directly. And please don't be afraid to reach out to Dan as well. Not to throw you under the bus, Dan, but
hey,
hopefully everybody can engage with you and learn from the best. And we're just getting started, everybody. That was question 1, just so you know. So let's keep moving forward, Dan. And I want everybody to dive a little bit deeper into you as a man and what really drives you. So the second question is the why, right? What drives you? What motivates you? What gets you excited every day out of bed to do what you do to the level you do it at?
I had a conversation about a week ago with a two very talented gentlemen.
Okay.
And it was for the purpose of, they were encouraging me to join their brokerage.
Okay.
And they had asked me, why did you not, consider this in the past? And I was having a conversation just like this. And obviously I can't do this right now because it would be too distracting.
Sure.
But in that context, it was a Zoom conversation very similar to this. I took my computer, I said, hold on. And I walked outside right over here, and I walked around the back, and I showed them, I said, okay, do you see that? And they said, yes. I said, that's my mom's house that I built for her.
Wow.
Okay. Now I'm in Northern Virginia, which is a really populated area.
Okay.
Okay. And so, so I'm fortunate and grateful to be able to live on a very large lot, 5 acres.
Love it.
I've got this beautiful view in front of me. That's 15 acres of a view in front of me. And for years, my why, and was probably we'll backtrack. For years, it was to get this house.
Sure.
All right. That was probably a 15-year journey.
Wow.
And then it was probably about a 3-year journey to be able to build my mom's house. And that's what I focused on every single day. And now I'm focusing on building a pool for my daughter. She's 9 years old, and I want to have that pool done when she's still young enough to enjoy it. Now, those are tangible, like whys.
Sure.
The less tangible and the overarching in all of that, because I've always had 2 whys, right?
Okay.
So I've had like here's a goalpost right now, and here's something that's a larger endeavor, and that is to open up doorways for others.
Wow.
And what I mean by that was, it took me a long time to really figure out my big overarching why. And I was talking to a coach, right? Because that's I know that, I've always had a coach, at least 1 to 2 or 3.
Sure.
And I was talking to a coach one day, and she said to me, she said, Dan, what's important in your life personally? And I said, my wife and my daughter. She said, okay, talk about your relationship with your daughter. Like, let's talk about that. What's important to you in that relationship? And as we talked, I realized to say, listen, I don't know if she's going to go to Harvard. I don't know if she's going to be a housewife. I don't know if she's going to be a waitress. And frankly, I don't care.
Sure.
However, what I do care is that whatever ambition that she wants, that doorway is open for her.
Wow.
Okay. And so, and because she's, I adopted her and so she doesn't have that nature of me.
Sure.
Like I don't have any nature to give her. I only have nurture to give her. And so if her nature allows for her to live life at a high level, my job is to nurture her to be able to see that potential within herself and hopefully step into that. Okay. Sure. I'm going to encourage her. I'm not going to push her through the doorway, but I always want to make sure that she has a doorway in front of her open. So so I'm talking to the coach and she says, okay, well, how does that apply to your business? And that was the aha.
Yeah.
That was like, oh my goodness, that's it. And I had struggled with this big why, the overarching why for years. And I said, okay, I got it. Right. And so then, for probably the last, 8 or 9 years, what's gotten me up every day and excited besides, getting those tangible goals was to be able to open up doorways for others in regards to, helping real estate agents to live the very best version of themselves. Sure. And that's what the big why has been.
Well, Dan, and I want to address a couple of those in particular. So obviously you're talking about the tangibles, and I think that having those tangible goals are huge for so many producers and professionals in all industries. And I think that that's just heavy encouragement to hit that and then plant another one, hit that and keep moving forward. The intangibles, however, when you're talking about, your family, you're talking about your mom, you're talking about your daughter. I mean, it's a beautiful thing that you're saying there, Dan. And obviously it's such a driving force and a very, very heartfelt why. I love the fact that you're talking about opening doors and just really, showing that nurture portion to your daughter and in the adoption, kind of mentality, I think is wonderful to project. And for anybody out there who's watching or listening, a mom or dad, parents at all, I'm a firm believer that it's not even so much of what's inside of them or those sorts of things. It's the example that we're setting as parents, right? I mean, your daughter, Dan, is watching you and what you've done with your life and what you continue to do, whether she realizes it or not, whether she says it or not, it's a huge example for her. So
yeah. And I realize, and thank you for pointing that out, Greg, because I actually go through that in the book, and because I say the book is about a third of personal development, a third of like here's how, and that's for new agents, seasoned agents, top producers, rainmakers, and then about a third of it is just really just the encouragement, right? Like here's the how, here's my personal story, and here's the personal development. Okay. And so in that in the section of that personal development, I use an example, and you talk about the modeling.
Yeah.
And you utilize this to be, to make a point about something else I was talking about in the book. Yet I was sharing that, between the ages of 1 to 7, that we as human beings, that we are at that point, we're basically being programmed. Okay. So that's our developmental stage. And then my daughter has just recently entered into within the last couple of years into the modeling stage. And so she'll be in that stage from about 7 to 13.
Wow.
Where now it's like what she observes is what's going to become. Like, how do I treat my wife? That's almost more important than anything.
Sure.
If I'm at the stoplight driving my car and I'm checking my Facebook, well, you know what? I can't expect her when she's 16 or 17 to not do the same.
Right.
Okay. Cause she's learning from daddy right now.
Yeah.
So, I put my phone in the glove box. When she turns about 13, and for ladies, it goes up to around 22. For men, because we're knucklehead, it goes up to about 27.
Makes sense.
That's socialization.
Sure.
And that's where the friends are able to be able to impact the growth of us as humans.
Wow.
And so if you are a parent, and I know this, this isn't real estate, but again, it's about being the best version of yourself.
Correct. And
you understand what stage that your children are in, then you can be able to adapt how you're communicating with them. So when your children are, 9 or 10, you should be planning for when they're going to be 13. Because once they get into socialization, there's really not much that a parent can do except encourage and influence the environments that they're in.
Wow.
Okay. And so right now, what's most important, I had a conversation with my daughter 2 days ago.
Okay.
I said, I was talking about her. I said, okay, what are your friends? A, B, and C. I'll just say it like that.
Yeah.
And she said, again, my daughter's 9 years old, and she said her top 3 friends. And I recognized, I said, okay, I just called it. I said, okay, A is really, she lies a lot. And B, she's influenced you. She's a bad influence.
Wow.
And C, she's really a fun person to be around and is not a bad influence and doesn't lie. Am I right about that, honey? And she's like, yeah, Daddy, because we have that tight relationship. It wasn't conflicting, anything like that. And I said, okay. In every morning before I go to work, I tell her, I say, I want you to have the best day of your life today. I want you to be grateful today. I want you to help someone today. And I want you to make good choices.
Wow.
I've said that to her every single morning since she's been born, or at least since I've, met her.
Yeah.
And so when I was having that conversation yesterday or 2 or 3 days ago, I say, okay, so it's A, B, or C. And so you can hang out with whoever you want to,
right? And
who would be the best choice? Again, so she has control over that. She's like, oh, with that, I think C. I was like, well, I encourage that. I think that's a good choice.
I would agree with that. Yeah, for sure.
Right. And so that's my philosophy. And so I take those philosophies into, like working with clients or working with agents. It's the same philosophy, right? It doesn't have to just be with children, right? Yet it does apply there.
Yeah, I agree, Dan. I mean, people are people and thought process is thought process, and it doesn't matter what age range that's in. And good decisions and okay and not so good decisions, they're all across the board. But I think that, we're diving into the applicable portion and everybody's kind of favorite time frame in the Titans interview. So I do want to get into this part because I know that there's just so much knowledge that you can share. And obviously, we probably have just a whole episode on this one question, but I do want to dive into it. So Dan, if you could look back at your career thus far and pick or choose a few things that you added or implemented to your business that you really saw it grow or scale, what's that look like for you? What advice would you give to the newer agent or the seasoned pro? What's in your head that way?
Well, let me share with you what I would have said to myself, which is maybe different than that newer agent or the seasoned pro.
Yeah, love it.
Really, and I, could certainly share with that as well. But there's really 2 things that come into my mind. Okay. Where certainly everything's a learning opportunity. And what I learned to say, if I did this differently, then maybe my journey would have been more fruitful, or whatever the case, or easier. Sure. And I'm still grateful for having those learning experiences. The 2 things that come to mind is number one is I understood early on that the key to a lot of business was to look for a lot of business. And I had the misperception that I could find a lot of business. I could and then I could find some agents and I could throw that business over my shoulder and they would catch it. And then we would go to closing and everybody's happy. Well, the mistake that I made early on was I didn't put the same intention into finding the right people.
Wow.
Okay. And so if I was a new agent today and I was an ambitious new agent, right now, this is different than I'm just trying to figure out how to survive. This is somebody that was sitting there saying, I want the biggest life possible. Right. And then I would suggest to sit there and say, as a new agent, spend 90% of your time looking for business and 10% looking for relationships. And then as you develop into that seasoned agents, you want to get that closer to 50-50. And then as a top producer, it should be more 90-10 in that evolution. Okay. Wow. So it's about the people. Okay. And so the people that you're working with, the agents that you bring on, the staff that you bring on, the marketing people that you bring on, the client care people that you bring on. Right. So if I would have realized that sooner in my career, I would have solved a lot of headaches. Wow. or avoided them. Sure. Second thing that I learned, early on, because as I mentioned to you, I bought the brokerage. I was only an agent for 1.5 years. Wow. And I think I sort of touched on that earlier where I wouldn't have done that. Sure. It wasn't that I would have waited. Right. Okay. And I would have sat there and said, you know what, let me wait to develop what I'm working on right now so that it's more stable and sustainable. and then do the next, so that I can focus my energy, 95% of my energy, into one thing at a time.
Wow.
All right. And so that's what I really learned was, okay, do one thing at a time. And you doesn't mean that you have to only do one thing.
Sure.
Right. It's just one thing at a time.
Right.
And, that's what I learned through that experience.
No, I mean, but Dan, that's applicable information. And again, takeaways for everybody to utilize and look at through the process of, not necessarily going back and changing anything. And again, but just perspective that you would say, if you're ambitious and you want to get after it, having that, 90-10 and then 50-50 and then back to the 90-10 the other way, I think is beautiful. And that makes a ton of sense. People that are having a hard time with that, reach out to Dan, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Visit the site, get the book, all those things. But I think that is just priceless information. But then if you look at it from the standpoint, there's always a right and a wrong time, but we don't necessarily always know that. And at the time, that opportunity presented itself. And you walked through the door and you did what you did. You learned what you learned, and that's okay. But I think perspective is great. And I think that what we focus on becomes our strengths, right? And that becomes what it grows, is what we focus on. So I love the fact that you're mentioning these things. And, people need to hear these from true pros, people who've walked the talk. They've been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. So Dan, I love that you're, kind of giving that food for thought and diving deeper into it. Now, when it comes to, before we move on to the next question, I do want to talk a little bit about GetRockSolidCoaching.com and you specifically into taking so much knowledge, so many tools and thought processes and educating the best practices for real estate professionals. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So basically, GetRockSolidCoaching.com is a combination of a lot of interviews like this of the top minds in the real estate industry.
Love it.
And not just in real estate industry, but also in thought process. Right. I've interviewed hypnotists on there. I've interviewed half billionaires on there. I've interviewed, real estate agents that are doing 2,000 transactions on there, or 400 or 500, whatever the case may be. Really high-minded individuals, because I've always had the philosophy. One of the things that I learned from the former CEO of the company that I belong to, he hammered this in. It was like, look, I'm not slowing down for you. I'm going to talk at the highest of levels. And your job is to catch up to me. And if you fall short, well, guess what? You still probably got further than what you wanted.
Yes.
Okay.
That's
right.
Great.
And so I'm only going to talk at the highest of levels. And so I've taken the philosophy with Get Rock Solid Coaching to do the same. Right. Okay. And so we're going to talk at the highest of levels to learn from the very, very best people. But if you sit there and you sort of break all this apart, through the years, and you go back to the book of what's in there is real estate evolution. It's the 10-step guide to CPI. So what is CPI? That's consistent, predictable income.
Love it.
Right. So that's the proprietary systems that we utilize to be able to have a predictable future. Okay. And so then, on that website, it's the same thing. It's taking and documenting. Okay. And it doesn't matter where you are in your career. Again, beginner, seasoned, top producer, rainmaker.
Right.
It's going to speak to where you are, because at the beginning, it's going to be about the beginning is going to be about personal development.
Okay.
And then you're going to stack on top of that personal development. And here's where most people start, is on the lead generation.
Interesting.
Right. Well, for me, it's like, if you don't have a really, really good foundation of your personal development, and I teach you hacks in personal development. Beautiful. Right. I teach you about, okay, here's the program which lead to the thoughts, which lead to the feelings, actions, results, which feed back into the programming. Okay. Well, where's the hack? Well, the hack is, because that's a circular reference, right? You can't get out of that easily. Okay. Because if you have great feelings, then you're going to have the program leads to the feelings, then you're going to have the thoughts. So if you have great feelings, you're going to have great thoughts. And if you have, poor feelings, bad feelings, you're going to have bad thoughts. Right. Sure. So it's hard to sort of get into that. So it's like, how do you get out of that? Well, you can hit that programming. You can hit the, you can exercise, the people that you surround yourself with, reading, meditation, all these types of things. Right. So that's how you sort of get out of that. And that's one of the things that we teach, in the book, also on the website as well, just to give you an example.
Yeah, but Dan, that's incredible. And again, I want to shed as much light on what you do and who you are for the audience as possible, because it's so valuable and there's so many takeaways and action items there. So please visit the site, check out the book. I mean, we'll have links in the comments down below. I want to keep that in mind for everybody out there, so it's easy to access Dan and everything that he's talking about today. So Dan, I do want to shift gears on the tone of the particular interview.
Hey, all right.
So
Party time.
Here we go.
I didn't know. Is that the right direction?
It could be. It could.
All right, cool.
It depends on what your challenge is. It might be a party. It might not be. But this is the challenge question. At the end of the day, we all have them. We all have struggles, whether they're personal, professional. No one's exempt. In the past, we're dealing with it now, or into the future. But I'm a firm believer. It's not so much what happens, but what we learn and grow from, and what we can share from in perspective. Not to downplay pain or sorrow, though, Dan. I mean, it's never a fun thing, right? But if you're comfortable sharing a challenge, whether it was personal or professional, that you became stronger because of it, what's that look like for you?
I had a really talented person that was working for me and leading the brokerage that I owned.
Okay.
And this individual and I were oil and water.
Interesting. Okay.
So our chemistries were not aligned. And she was a really talented person.
Okay.
And so I made the decision, because we were so conflicting, that it wasn't going to be successful moving forward. As a result of that, there was a lot of pain that I had experienced with people leaving the organization after we parted ways.
Sure.
So what I learned, before I tell you what I learned, which is really about the experience of every single time that, somebody would leave the place, I felt like, okay, I hit rock bottom.
Wow.
And I would have that feeling in my gut, like, okay, like it can't get any worse than this. Right. It felt like, it was the feelings were just horrific.
Wow.
And then the next, week, another person, and then I felt like would leave us. And then I felt like there was another bottom. Okay. And I just felt like, it was like when I thought I was low as I could get, the rug got pulled out from me another half a dozen times.
Wow.
And I remember standing in my, lived in a townhome.
Sure.
And I remember in my master bedroom, and it was like the rug got pulled out from me one more time. And it was so painful to me. I was crying. Damn. Right. Like, it was, I felt the pain on that day. And that was literally just like a combination of pain, stacked on pain.
Right.
And so what I learned from that experience was really to be, understanding that culture is a really important piece of the relationships that you establish. And the definition of culture, a lot of times we hear culture in the business environment, and I think that we look at it inaccurately. We look at culture as a good thing. Really what culture is just the way we treat each other.
Wow.
Okay. So that could be like great, and it can also be not great. And so, regardless of talent, culture and what I learned trumps talent. Okay. Vision trumps, vision. You got to start with a vision, and it's got to start with communicating that vision. Here's where we're going. And then making sure that you're aligned with the right people. So that doesn't mean that individual was the wrong person.
Right.
It just meant that we didn't align. Okay. And so that was a learning opportunity that I had experienced. And, as a result of that, I learned really, really to be critical of the relationships that I established. Okay. And then you fast forward a little bit, what I understand is that you're still not going to always get it right in regards to relationships. And so what I've learned is to get out of relationships that aren't the right relationships quickly.
Yeah. Well said.
And then pour into the relationships with the people that you align with. Like, my job is that you are going to achieve every single freaking goal of your life. Wow. Well, guess what? Before that's my job, guess what I got to do? I got to know what their goals are. Right. I've got to take the time to learn about them as people, right? As individuals, and what are your aspirations? Why are you doing this? Just like you asked me, why are you doing this? Sure. It doesn't have to be that big aspirational, right? It could be, I'm doing this because my mom's sick and I got to pay for her medicine.
Wow.
Right. It could be, I got pregnant and I didn't plan for that.
Sure.
Right. Like, right. Whatever it is. Right. That's the real, right there. Okay. And so I think that too many people like ignore it and they're like in la la land. And you go back to the why and understanding and working with your people of the why. Well, opening up doorways is aspirational, right? But it's not, right? It's more like it's like chunking up.
Yeah.
Right. Like that, if you're looking at the hierarchy of needs in that, that young lady that doesn't know how she's going to pay her rent.
Right.
What the hell does she care about opening up doorways for others? She needs to pay her rent.
Right.
Right. She can't even focus on self-actualization at this point. Okay. So you have to meet people for where they are.
Wow.
Right. And so that's so that's like a sort of a long, process of learnings that were sort of stacked on top of each other.
Wow. But Dan, I mean, it's incredible that you're able to share this with the audience and myself, today, and really understanding that perspective of what you went through. And, you painted a picture, and I felt your emotion when you're talking about standing in your room and, brought you to tears and an emotion. It's just pain on top of pain on top of pain. And, just that visualization of the rug getting pulled out underneath you again and again and again. And I think that so many of us have been through different things and processes in our lives and felt that way. But what really I think everybody should take away is that you didn't give up. You kept moving forward. You learned from these experiences and you became a better man, a better businessman, and a better example from it. And I think that even though that's really crummy that you had to go through that, right? And it's not something that you ever want to experience the pain or the sorrow or frustration, but that's where you really learn. Those are some of the best lessons in life. And, you wouldn't be the man today without that experience, Dan. So
thank you, Greg. And thank you for those thoughts. And you know who else never gives up? A wildebeest.
That's right. Is it a wildebeest or is it a water buffalo?
It's a wildebeest, man.
Okay.
And for the listeners and the viewers, yes. I'm so sorry I slipped an inside joke there that you will not get, and I'm so sorry.
Gosh,
but hit me up and I'll share that with you.
Yes, you know what? This is a conversation between Dan and I. We're sharing with you, everybody out there. So, Dan, I love that. I love the fact that you said that, my friend, and completely changed the mood, which is a good thing because this is going to the next portion. This is actually one of my favorites. So we made it through the tough stuff. This is the travel back in time question. Now, I'm kind of a movie nerd, so sometimes I throw out there, we don't have a time machine like Doc Brown and Back to the Future. However, if you did, and you could go back in time, any time frame, any age range, and give younger Dan a piece of advice or two. Now, this isn't to change your life, right?
Yeah.
So, because we discussed what you went through made you who you are. But what would you say to your younger self if you could say something? So
if I get in my DeLorean and I go backwards, I would say that I had a lot of sort of like plateaus and then discoveries and relaunching of my life, right? So in high school, I had a tough time. I already shared with you I was abusing alcohol. I started that like at 13 years old.
Wow.
Okay, and then I went into the military because I didn't see a pathway in front of me.
Okay.
So I turned from being Danny to being Rochon.
Mm.
And then I got out of the Army and I went back to, it was like I continued my destructive ways.
Sure.
I mean, that continued. And then I've already shared with you about, when I launched into as an entrepreneur and as a real estate agent. Mm-hmm. Well, so it sort of depends on which stage that I would be in regards to the advice I would give. But I would give you one overriding thing.
Love it.
That I would tell Danny, or I would tell Rochon, or I would tell Dan in his early years. Mm. And that would be that you're worthy.
Wow.
And you're worthy to do whatever it is that God put you on this planet to do as a spirit.
Wow.
And you are a spiritual being manifested in a human body. Okay. Every time that I feel fear, every single time that I have something that I am afraid of, I recognize, I go back to say, okay, well, first of all, is the fear keeping me safe or is the fear BS?
Right.
Okay. Because if it's keeping me safe, then it's appropriate. Okay. Sure. Maybe, right? Maybe there's a way to still get through something and be safe, right? Uh-huh. But I'm afraid to put my hand on, on that hot stove. Well, that's appropriate.
Right.
So every single time but it's calling an expired listing. Like, like there's nothing that I have to be safe about except, following the do not call registry or whatever.
Right.
So every single time that I experience that fear, I remind myself that, Dan, you're a spiritual being. So who cares?
Wow.
And for some reason or another, having that awareness of like that I'm a spiritual being, and I have on my desk right here, I've got a bunch of, like 4 little sticky notes. One of these sticky notes says, at the end of the day, will it have been worth it?
Wow.
Right. And so for me, it's like, well, what, it's starting with that foundation of being the very best that I can. And a part of that is understanding why I'm doing what I'm doing. Right. And then endeavoring to be the very best version of myself, and understanding those little things that, I could be fearful of, and saying, well, I'm a spiritual being. I don't know what's after this. I have no idea what's after this.
Right.
Okay. I have a belief of what's after that. I don't have a knowledge of what's after this. Okay. And so life is what I mean when I say what's after this.
Oh yeah, sure.
And so, understanding that I'm just going to be like, hey, I'm going to take the very best shot that I can be. I'm going to not pay attention to that fear. I'm going to do action anyways. And so those would be the things that I would say would be an overriding type thing. And there's a lot of, things that in the segments, but you're worthy and you're a spiritual being. So live the very best life that God put you here to live.
I mean, Dan, you cease to amaze me just every step of the way through this conversation. You went deep there, man. You went deep. And I love the fact that you did, because that message is for everybody watching and listening, myself included, right now. We can't go back. We can't change what we did and who we are and what's going on, but we can affect today. We can affect tomorrow and the lives of others around us with that mentality. You are worthy. You are a spiritual being. Keep moving forward in that. I mean, that's such beautiful messaging and advice. I love it, Dan. I love that you went deep, my friend, because not everybody does. So it's just really, really great to get the real information. I think it's beautiful, beautiful stuff. Now, with that being said, I want to go a little bit deeper into your.
Oh my God, I gotta go deeper.
Yes, we can dig a little deeper. I know there's.
I gotta get my shovel out here, man.
Here we go. Where's the backhoe? It's coming through. But when you're looking at it from that standpoint, everybody wants to tune in and learn from the Titans, very specifically in their minds, right? How they're growing intellectually, what they're feeding their thoughts. And you talk about mindset. And again, there's variations. I've heard feedback loops, positive and negative feedback loops. Yeah. And what we, kind of feed our minds, just like our bodies, that's who we become. So what books are you reading that you love or enjoy or have read? Podcasts you're listening to, influencers or coaches, Sure. mentors that you have in your life. That way, if there's conferences you attend physically or virtually, how are you feeding your mind?
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, I will be brief.
Okay.
First book, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill.
Love it.
Okay. That would be a foundational book for anybody.
Sure.
So it goes back to that belief system. It goes back to that vision. Of knowing where you're going to go, mostly, except for when you start writing a book, sometimes you get confused. But that's a good outcome. That's a great outcome, Dan, for sure. But either way, so it's about thinking and understanding that, not that I would ever want this to happen to me, but as long as my brain is still healthy, I can still live a healthy life. Mm-hmm. Okay. I have a friend, God bless him. His grown son, and his grown son has an infant. He flipped his truck about 4 or 5 months ago, and he's paralyzed now.
Oh.
And he's a young man. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I get that he doesn't. I don't even have words for it. Okay. Sure. But if I was talking to that person right now, not him, of course, right? But if somebody's listening to this or whatever. It really is going to depend on where they were in their lives in regards to, their perspective. And God, I hope that never happens to me or anybody that is close to me that I love. Right. But I know as long as I keep my brain and my spirit, I'm good. Okay. Or at least I'll figure out how to be good. Sure. That's that think and grow rich, right? That's that thinking part of it. Yeah. In regards to like podcasts, that type of thing, I would say Tim Ferriss. And the
Okay.
reason why I say Tim Ferriss is because what Tim's superpower is similar to what my superpower is on different levels, which is to just simply study success and emulate it when it's appropriate.
Sure.
Okay. And so for me, it's understanding that success leaves clues and so does failure. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm going to lead an ignorant life, which means that I'm not going to take the time to actually observe the clues,
right,
then it's sort of a crapshoot.
Right. Sure.
Right. It's just a life by default. Like throw a dart behind your back and wherever it lands is going to be where it lands.
Yep.
Okay. It could be good, right? But it could just as easily be bad.
For sure.
And so it's about studying like people that lived before us and then taking out from them if I can be like them, and then I do the actions that they do, then I can receive the results that they have.
Well said.
Okay. And so it's like understanding. And when I say be, which will transition into mentors, and I have two mentors and neither of them know that they're my mentor. Okay.
Interesting. All right.
Adam Hergenrother and Ben Kinney. Okay. And I've years ago, I didn't know either one of them. I've met them both, casually.
Sure.
Right. But I was intentional to do that. And so anyway, so the reason, so it goes back into that B. So the first step when I'm looking at these individuals, the reason why they're my mentors without that relationship, right? It's just about like, I'm going to observe what they're doing and it's going to start with who are they being? Okay. And, like even to their environment, right? When they're working, are they standing up? Like, what is their environment? I went up to Vermont to meet with Adam to look at his environment.
Sure.
Right. Like literally, like what is your environment? Right. Do you have a glass of water on your desk? Okay. Like down to that level of who are you being? Wow. And then looking at the actions that you're taking. Now, granted, you may be in a different life and I'm in a different place than the two of them are. Right. So then when you're looking at the actions that they're taking, you have to see what's appropriate for where you are in your life. Yet then you get the results, which are going to be, relatively close. Sure. So those are the two mentors. And then going back to the Tim Ferriss and the models, that would be an example of sitting there saying, okay, well, there are models of success. Correct. All right. Now, that models of business success does not also mean that those individuals would be models of, spiritual sense or relationship sense or health sense. Right. They could be. Okay. And that's one of the reasons why I intended to emulate Adam, because from the outside, and I'm not judging his insides by his outsides. Sure. But it appears that he has a good relationship with his wife. Sure. It appears that he's healthy. I know he does Ironman, right? Sure. Which, by the way, I've done, the mini triathlons. Oh, love it. To emulate, right? Because I'm like, hey, if that's what he's doing, that's what I'm going to do. Very cool. Right. Down to that level. So even taking like, just not like business, but also looking at, and again, it's all just perception. But guess what? If he's a crappy dude, who cares? Because for me as a mentor, it's about sitting there saying, if he was a spiritual person, right? If he was good to his wife, what would he do? Right. Right. Because it's all imagination anyways. Because ultimately you don't know what's going on in somebody else's mind. You can just observe. Yeah. Right. And so that would be my take on mentors and podcast and books. Wow. But Dan, I love the fact that you're taking it from so many different sources. And when you're talking about, the physical reading of books and, talking about audio and podcasts, but then emulation and mentorships, you're taking it to another level, which I think so many of us really need to dissect and look further into, is that emulation portion and picking and choosing segments of, our physicality, our spirituality, our relationships, and our business. Sometimes you can emulate all of those into one, but you pick and choose, but you create the best as you said earlier, the best version of yourself and really just progress and evolve through your life. And you're not going to do it all at once, but it's that consistent amount of action on a regular basis. And some people would say massive amounts of consistency will get you there.
it's all relative, but I think that that's the truth. And everything that you've been saying, there's some and more, is just hugely applicable for everybody who's watching or listening. And the takeaways and just thought processes. I mean, I just love the fact that you're real and you went there, Dan, and I love it. This information, I know everybody's freaking out on this, and I think it's great. I do want to go into one final question.
Sure.
And this ends up being a quote.
Are we going to dig another hole here? I mean, how many carpets are going to be pulled out from me here?
This is the last carpet. This is the last carpet. I swear it comes into it. So it's got to be the quote or mantra. And you've said so many beautiful things already, but
Sure.
Something you live by, something that represents you, and what does that look like for you into your life and what you represent out there in the community, Dan?
There's so many. It really, truly is. What comes to my mind immediately would be, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Again, it's consistent with the belief.
Yep.
Never, never, never give up. I would just put about another 87 nevers on there.
Yeah. That's great.
With the caveat, never, 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 never give up unless if it's something you should give up.
Well said.
Okay. So there's a little asterisk on that.
Yep.
And so those would be two things that sort of jump into my mind.
Oh, Dan, I can't thank you enough. I mean, this has just been an absolute pleasure and an honor. And again, every time I get to talk to you and hang out with you, Dan, it's just the best day. It truly is. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking the time. It was an honor to have you on the show, my friend.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And I do need to say you're an official Real Estate Titan. So that is the thing. I definitely need to put that out there. It's official, everybody.
Do I get a pin?
Yeah, gosh, no pins, no trophies yet, no documentation. I need to work on that. I need to step it up. You'd think episode 185 it'd be there by now. What's wrong with me? But Dan, thank you again, and everybody, thank you as always for your time and attention, love and support. If you like hearing what we're doing with Real Estate Titans, don't forget to like, subscribe. You know what to do at this point. I do have to give our sponsor a quick shout out, Lionbolt Media. If you are in real estate, you're looking to grow and scale your business digitally to the highest levels. We're really talking about automation. Really getting massive amounts of exposure to your current markets and generate high value clients, visit lionboltmedia.com. We are here live every Tuesday on Real Estate Titans, every Tuesday and Friday afternoon, a different Titan, a different location. We'll catch everybody in the next live episode of Real Estate Titans. Take care. Thanks, Dan.
My pleasure.